Golden State Warriors. Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, DeAnthony Melton, Gary Payton II. Theron W. Henderson, Getty Images. After missing the playoffs last season, the Golden State Warriors put themselves in a good position at the start of the season to make sure that doesn't happen again while having plenty of flexibility to upgrade the roster in several directions. In addition to owning all of their first-round picks except for 2030, which is protected 1-20 to Washington, the Warriors have young assets and veterans on expiring contracts to dangle on the trade market. Forward Jonathan Kuminga is the young asset who's drawn the most trade interest for Golden State over the years and is expected to do so again ahead of restricted free agency this summer. Kuminga and his agent, Aaron Turner, were far apart on extension talks with the Warriors before the season. Kuminga was seeking as close to a maximum contract as possible, while the Warriors were hoping for something closer to $30 million annually, league sources told Hoops Hype. Following Jalen Johnson's 5-year, $150 million contract extension with the Atlanta Hawks, there was a thought that maybe Kuminga's asking price would come down since he was closely eyeing that situation because both play the same position and are about the same age. Instead, nothing came close on a similar 5-year, $150 offer for Kuminga because it seemed like the least he would have considered was a 5-year, $175 million deal, Hoops Hype has learned. Since the season began, Kuminga has mostly come off the bench and has struggled shooting the ball from the field at career-low percentages across the board. Conversely, the Warriors and guard Moses Moody agreed on a 3-year, $39 million extension. Since then, Moody has shot 39% from three-point range but has remained a rotation player for roughly 17 minutes. With Moody's role remaining the same over the past few seasons and not increasing, executives across the league believe Moody is a name to monitor on the trade market with a movable salary. Moody could be part of a package in a bigger deal, and Steve Kerr still doesn't play him 20 minutes a game, an NBA executive told Hoops Hype. The loss of fellow guard DeAnthony Melton to ACL surgery was a tough blow as he was showing signs of being a veteran glue player for the Warriors, who could shoot the three-pointer efficiently and guard on the perimeter. However, his $12.82 million expiring contract could still be a trade asset to match salaries for another player or intrigue a team trying to dump salary. Melton also likely won't command a higher salary than his current figure after missing almost the entire season, which would put the Warriors in the driver's seat to bring him back if they choose. Another veteran who could be dangled on the trade market as an expiring contract is guard Gary Payton II, who's owed $9.13 million this season. The 32-year-old guard remains a solid perimeter defender, but his three-point percentage has sharply declined from years past. While some executives around the league thought Andrew Wiggins would also be available after a down campaign last season, the Canadian forward has shot a career-high 41% from three-point range and returned to form. Finally, center Kevon Looney drew exploratory trade interest from the Knicks, Thunder, and Grizzlies early this offseason before the organizations pivoted in other directions, Hoops Hype has learned. Amid his 10th season of his career, all with the Warriors, Looney has since led the team in rebounding, 7.6 in 14.9 minutes per game. Denver Nuggets. Zeke Naji. Nikola Jokic is on pace to win his 4th MVP award in 5 years while averaging a triple-double. Still, Jamal Murray's early season shooting struggles and the absence of Aaron Gordon with a right calf strain for a prolonged stretch have Denver off to an underwhelming start to the season by their championship contending standards. Conversely, younger players such as Christian Braun, who replaced Kentavious Caldwell-Pope as a starter after he signed with Orlando in free agency, and reserves Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther have all seen their minutes and production rise this season, which was an emphasis for Denver this season. With Denver's core four of Jokic, Murray, Gordon, and Michael Porter Jr. all signed through at least the 2026-27 season, the Nuggets will look to tinker around the edges for any possible upgrades. One player who could be dangled in trade talks ahead of February's deadline is 23-year-old forward Zeke Naji, who's seen a reduced role over the past 2 seasons and is starting a 4-year, $32 million extension this season. Boston Celtics. Jaden Springer. While rival executives believe Boston's starting lineup will become too expensive to retain in the future under the collective bargaining agreement, that's a bridge Boston will cross down the line. The Celtics retained every significant player on the roster, believing their continuity puts them in the best position to repeat as champions and maximize their window as long as possible. Before the season began, however, Boston considered a change towards the back end of its roster. Following a strong end to the preseason for Lonnie Walker, the Celtics gauged the trade market on Jaden Springer, league sources told Hoops Hype. Teams across the league hoped to pry future draft pick compensation from the Celtics for taking on Springer's $4 million salary, sources said. However, Boston wasn't interested in giving up future draft capital to move the 22-year-old former first-round pick. The luxury tax penalties for signing Walker the 4th to the 15th spot were ultimately too steep for Boston to retain him into the season. With Springer out of the rotation and given Boston's luxury tax situation, he's unlikely to receive a qualifying offer this summer as well. Chicago Bulls. Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic and Lonzo Ball. Following the losses of DeMar DeRozan and Alex Caruso this offseason, the Chicago Bulls are in the midst of a youth movement with Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, and Lonzo Ball available for trade. LaVine has played well after appearing in only 25 games last season. He's shooting career highs from the field and three-point range but is owed $138 million through the 2026-27 season, including his player option. Vucevic is also shooting better than ever from the field and three-point line while averaging 20 points for the first time in 4 seasons. He's owed $41.48 million through the 2025-26 season. Ball's return to the court after missing nearly 3 years has been one of the best stories this season. While Ball has shown flashes of effectiveness in limited action so far this season, his expiring $21.4 million contract is what makes him a trade asset for Chicago. Thus far, multiple executives who've spoken to the Bulls say Chicago still has asking prices that are too high for LaVine and Vucevic, given their contracts. If both players continue their torrid paces, will a playoff contender believe adding either player could be the missing piece to a deep playoff run? That's the question Chicago is willing to wait for the answer. Dallas Mavericks. Maxi Kleber. After adding Klay Thompson in the offseason, the Dallas Mavericks will monitor the trade market for more potential upgrades to help the team return to the NBA Finals again for the second consecutive season. Executives around the league have poked around to see whether Dallas would part with either center Daniel Gafford or Derek Lively, but that has been met with initial resistance for now. Instead of parting with one of their coveted centers, the Mavericks can look at potential upgrades by dangling their first-round picks in 2025 and 2031. In addition, Quentin Grimes and Olivier Maxence Prosper are young pieces that could sweeten a potential trade package. It's worth noting Grimes and the Mavericks were apart on contract extension talks before the season, sources said, but he's since shot the ball well from beyond the arc, played solid perimeter defense, and has started as a replacement at times. Prosper vaulted up draft boards ahead of the 2023 draft but is stuck on the depth chart behind proven veterans on a championship contending team. Lastly, Dallas is about $5.3 million above the luxury tax. Keep an eye on Maxi Kleber as a potential trade candidate. The Mavericks will look to unload him due to his remaining $22 million owed through next season. Following the blockbuster Karl Anthony Towns deal to the New York Knicks ahead of the season, who are the next top trade candidates around the league? We outlined the top players who could be on the move for all 30 NBA teams, including new reporting where applicable. Atlanta Hawks. Clint Capella and Larry Nance Jr. The Atlanta Hawks are at a crossroads. The Hawks are not a playoff contender nor bad enough to tank for high lottery pick odds, though it didn't stop them from improbably winning the lottery last year with only a 3% chance. At this point, the Hawks value 3-time All-Star Trae Young more than other teams around the league. Although Young leads the NBA in assists this season, the 26-year-old's field goal percentage has been the worst of his career, and his three-point percentage and scoring are only slightly above his rookie season production. Teams across the league also cite Young's shortcomings as a defender due to his size and whether you can advance far in the playoffs with him as one of your highest-paid stars, given the new collective bargaining agreement. Executives across the league exploring the center market believe Young's longtime pick-and-roll partner, Clint Capella, could be a trade candidate in the final year of his contract worth $22.27 million. Sources said teams such as the Knicks, Grizzlies, and Pelicans did their due diligence on Capella this offseason before going in other directions, with New York re-signing Precious Achiuwa and trading for Karl Anthony Towns, Memphis drafting Zach Edey, and New Orleans drafting Yves Missi. Larry Nance Jr., who's had an inconsistent role with Atlanta to start the season, is also a notable trade candidate in the final year of his contract worth $11.2 million. The 9-year veteran is considered a good leader in the locker room and has played more small ball center minutes in recent years. DeAndre Hunter has come up in trade rumors over the years. However, executives around the league question his durability despite his 3-and-D skill set, making him a potentially tough trade candidate to move with nearly $70 million owed through the 2026-27 season. Bogdan Bogdanović has drawn interest from teams searching for bench scoring over the years. Bogdanović will be worth monitoring as he rounds into form after returning from a right hamstring injury. Atlanta, however, has valued the 32-year-old's floor spacing and steady presence in the locker room. With rising star Jalen Johnson signed to a 5-year, $150 million extension, newly acquired Dyson Daniels thriving as a Defensive Player of the Year and All-Defensive Team candidate, number 1 overall pick Zachary Rissaker, and Onyeka Okongwu in line for an expanded role if Capella is traded or not retained this summer, Atlanta can focus on a youth movement and rebuild. Brooklyn Nets. Dennis Schroeder, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, Bojan Bogdanović and Day'Ron Sharpe. Coley Cleary, USA Today Sports Images. Top NBA trade candidates for the 2024-25 season. 6.2K. Shares. By Michael Scotto, December 2, 2024. Follow at Mike Scotto. Following the blockbuster Karl Anthony Towns deal to the New York Knicks ahead of the season, who are the next top trade candidates around the league? Hoops Hype outlined the top players who could be on the move for all 30 NBA teams, including new reporting where applicable. Atlanta Hawks. Clint Capella and Larry Nance Jr. Scott Kinser. Main images. The Atlanta Hawks are at a crossroads. The Hawks are not a playoff contender nor bad enough to tank for high lottery pick odds, though it didn't stop them from improbably winning the lottery last year with only a 3% chance. At this point, the Hawks value 3-time All-Star Trae Young more than other teams around the league. Although Young leads the NBA in assists this season, the 26-year-old's field goal percentage has been the worst of his career, and his 3-point percentage and scoring are only slightly above his rookie season production. Teams across the league also cite Young's shortcomings as a defender due to his size and whether you can advance far in the playoffs with him as one of your highest-paid stars, given the new collective bargaining agreement. Executives across the league exploring the center market believe Young's longtime pick-and-roll partner, Clint Capella, could be a trade candidate in the final year of his contract worth $22.27 million. Sources said teams such as the Knicks, Grizzlies, and Pelicans did their due diligence on Capella this offseason before going in other directions, with New York re-signing Precious Achiuwa and trading for Karl Anthony Towns, Memphis drafting Zach Edey, and New Orleans drafting Yves Missi. Larry Nance Jr., who's had an inconsistent role with Atlanta to start the season, is also a notable trade candidate in the final year of his contract worth $11.2 million. The 9-year veteran is considered a good leader in the locker room and has played more small ball center minutes in recent years. DeAndre Hunter has come up in trade rumors over the years. However, executives around the league question his durability despite his 3-and-D skill set, making him a potentially tough trade candidate to move with nearly $70 million owed through the 2026-27 season. Bogdan Bogdanović has drawn interest from teams searching for bench scoring over the years. Bogdanović will be worth monitoring as he rounds into form after returning from a right hamstring injury. Atlanta, however, has valued the 32-year-old's floor spacing and steady presence in the locker room. With rising star Jalen Johnson signed to a 5-year, $150 million extension, newly acquired Dyson Daniels thriving as a Defensive Player of the Year and All-Defensive Team candidate, number 1 overall pick Zachary Rissaker, and Onyeka Okongwu in line for an expanded role if Capella is traded or not retained this summer, Atlanta can focus on a youth movement and rebuild. Boston Celtics. Jaden Springer. China Wang, Getty Images. While rival executives believe Boston's starting lineup will become too expensive to retain in the future under the collective bargaining agreement, that's a bridge Boston will cross down the line. The Celtics retained every significant player on the roster, believing their continuity puts them in the best position to repeat as champions and maximize their window as long as possible. Before the season began, however, Boston considered a change towards the back end of its roster. Following a strong end to the preseason for Lonnie Walker, the Celtics gauged the trade market on Jaden Springer. League sources told Hoops Hype, teams across the league hoped to pry future draft pick compensation from the Celtics for taking on Springer's $4 million salary, sources said. However, Boston wasn't interested in giving up future draft capital to move the 22-year-old former first-round pick. The luxury tax penalties for signing Walker the 4th to the 15th spot were ultimately too steep for Boston to retain him into the season. With Springer out of the rotation and given Boston's luxury tax situation, he's unlikely to receive a qualifying offer this summer as well. Brooklyn Nets. Dennis Schroeder, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, Bojan Bogdanovic and Daron Sharp. Luke Hale's Getty Images. The Brooklyn Nets didn't get the memo they're supposed to be tanking. Instead, several veterans on the team have improved statistically to start the season under first-time NBA head coach Jordi Fernandez, who's maximized the roster well and has the Nets hovering around the .500 mark through a quarter of the season. Following the Mikal Bridges trade to New York and the trade with Houston to reacquire Brooklyn's 2025 first-round draft pick, the Nets are entering a rebuild and have the most trade candidates of any team. Overall, look for any Nets trade to be focused on acquiring future draft pick compensation, league sources told Hoops Hype. Before Nets 23-year-old leading scorer Cam Thomas suffered a left hamstring strain, The Athletic reported he is widely considered to be available. While any Net is technically considered available, given the early rebuilding stage the franchise is embarking on, it's worth noting league sources told Hoops Hype owner Joe Tsai is a fan of Thomas. Coach Fernandez has also lauded his scoring superpowers in press conferences. Thomas is also considered one of the most polarizing players in the league, as some NBA executives value his scoring ability and have taken notice of his improving efficiency. In contrast, others question if he can be a role player on a winning playoff caliber team and argue he gives up as many buckets on defense as he scores offensively. While the trade value of Thomas is scattered in the eyes of NBA talent evaluators, there's more of a consensus regarding his backcourt teammate. After being a flag bearer and advancing to the bronze medal game with Germany in the Olympics, Dennis Schroeder has played some of the most efficient basketball of his career, shooting a career-high 41% from three-point range in 19 games played. Schroeder has been Brooklyn's locker room leader as the alpha voice and an extension of Fernandez on the court as the floor general. A proven veteran at 31 years old and on an expiring $13 million deal, Schroeder is considered one of Brooklyn's top trade candidates by NBA executives who spoke with Hoops Hype. Those executives pegged Schroeder's current trade value at multiple second-round picks as a potential rental. Forward Dorian Finney-Smith is another veteran who's having the most efficient year of his career, shooting a career-high 42% from three-point range while playing strong defense. Finney-Smith's production is similar to the 2021-22 season when he and Dallas advanced to the Western Conference Finals. Several playoff-caliber teams have already expressed interest in Finney-Smith, with some valuing him worth multiple second-round picks, league sources told Hoops Hype. It's worth noting that Finney-Smith has a $15.38 million player option for the 2025-26 season, which he can decline or exercise and then agree to an extension later if he's moved to a contender focused on winning and prioritizing him in the rotation. Forward Cam Johnson is in the midst of his best offensive season and has tried to be the glue for Brooklyn's team this season. Some executives who spoke with Hoops Hype believe Johnson may be able to fetch a future first-round pick in return if the Nets trade him before the deadline. However, if it's up to the 28-year-old Johnson, he'd push to stay in Brooklyn. "I want to build this," Johnson told Hoops Hype. "I really like Coach Jordi. I like our staff. I think we're headed in the right direction. I can't tell them exactly what to do and how to proceed. The business will do what the business does. I don't take it personally either way. For me, I'm invested in what we have. It's been exciting to find progress and to see the potential. I want to be here and get this thing really turned around and back to winning basketball. I think we have the group to do it, and I think we have the assets and pieces to do it. Whatever they decide, no hard feelings." Johnson is owed $65.54 million through the 2026-27 season. Teams gauging the trade market for a backup center are monitoring Day'Ron Sharpe, who's expected to return soon from a hamstring injury for the Nets. With Noah Clowney out for at least a couple of weeks with a sprained ankle, it's an opportunity for the 23-year-old Sharpe to jump back into the rotation immediately. Sharpe, who's eligible for restricted free agency this summer, is being monitored by the Grizzlies, Clippers, Pelicans, Lakers, and Raptors, league sources told Hoops Hype. Forward Bojan Bogdanović is also hoping to make his return sometime in December. NBA executives around the league expect the Nets to showcase Bogdanović before the trade deadline and believe he could be worth a second-round pick if he looks healthy. Ultimately, the Nets are searching for players who will be a part of their future for at least the next 2 years in the grand scheme. Two Nets forwards who've made the most of their opportunities and are increasingly expected to be a part of that future are Jalen Wilson and Zaire Williams, league sources told Hoops Hype. The Nets have a $2.22 million team option on Wilson for the 2025-26 season. Williams is eligible to become a restricted free agent this summer. Lastly, two-way player Tyrese Martin has impressed recently by shooting a scorching 56% from three-point range through 8 games played and has become a rotation player for the Nets. Cleveland Cavaliers. Luxury tax salary dump. The Cleveland Cavaliers have been the NBA's hottest team to start the season after an offseason of retention, including extensions for Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, and Evan Mobley. As the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. However, Cleveland is slightly over the luxury tax threshold by roughly $1.8 million, so shedding a small contract could help extend the team's financial window with this group. Otherwise, Caris LeVert's $16.62 million expiring contract, Georges Niang, Isaac Okoro, and Cleveland's future 2031 first-round pick may come up in trade rumors leading into February if Cleveland wants to upgrade for a bigger wing. However, keep in mind coach Kenny Atkinson is close with LeVert and has been a big fan of his game since their Brooklyn days together. Niang brings toughness to the Cleveland locker room and is a close friend of Mitchell. Okoro also is one of the team's top perimeter defenders. Charlotte Hornets. Nick Richards, Cody Martin and Vasilije Micic. The Charlotte Hornets have several veterans who appeal to playoff-caliber teams while the organization focuses on developing its young core under new executive Jeff Peterson and coach Charles Lee. Nick Richards has drawn consistent interest from teams around the league in search of a center thanks to his double-double production when healthy this season and flexible contract, worth $5 million this season and is non-guaranteed for another $5 million for the 2025-26 season. Several executives around the league who spoke with Hoops Hype believe it would take at least 2 second-round picks to pry Richards from Charlotte. In the eyes of those executives, however, an asterisk to that equation is the health of starting center Mark Williams, who has yet to play this season. With Williams only playing 62 games total through the start of his third NBA campaign, Charlotte has placed more of an emphasis on keeping Richards. On the wing, Hornets swingman Cody Martin has shot 36% beyond the arc in 20 games while playing well defensively on the perimeter. Due to Martin's play thus far, an movable contract worth $8.12 million this season and is non-guaranteed for $8.68 million next season, he's another trade candidate to watch in Charlotte. Martin and future second-round draft picks from Charlotte were discussed in sign-and-trade discussions for Cleveland Cavaliers swingman Isaac Okoro this summer, which fell through once Okoro agreed to re-sign with Cleveland, league sources told Hoops Hype. In the backcourt, with Trey Mann seeing the bulk of backup point guard minutes, Vasilije Micic is a notable trade candidate to monitor in the eyes of executives around the league. Micic is owed $7.72 million this season and has a team option for $8.11 million next season. Micic proved he can play at the NBA level last season, averaging 10.8 points and 6.2 assists in 30 games after being acquired by the Hornets. The Serbian guard is also a proven clutch player from his EuroLeague career as a two-time champion 2021-22 and league MVP in 2021. Detroit Pistons. Isaiah Stewart, Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley and Paul Reed. Under new executive Trajan Langdon and coach J.B. Bickerstaff, the Detroit Pistons have shown growth and are in the mix for a potential play-in-tournament spot. This season, Detroit's top priority was helping Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey continue to develop and determine whether they can play together long-term. Both players are averaging the best numbers of their careers and are the team's top 2 leading scorers. Jalen Duren has also entrenched himself as the team's starting center for the second consecutive season. With that in mind, the Pistons have several veteran shooters and frontcourt players expected to draw trade interest ahead of February's deadline. Tim Hardaway Jr., $16.19 million, and Malik Beasley, $6 million, are shooting well from three-point range and are in the final year of their contracts. While Detroit placed a premium this offseason on acquiring both players to spread the floor and add veteran presences in the locker room, both could be intriguing short-term rentals for playoff-caliber teams. Isaiah Stewart is starting a 4-year, $60 million contract this season while coming off the bench for the first time since his rookie season, leaving executives around the league to believe he'll be available on the trade market. Stewart has improved his shot blocking this season, and his toughness in the paint has always been a consistent staple of his game. After playing the best basketball of his career in Philadelphia last season, Paul Reed has been used sparingly in Detroit. Reed is expected to be available ahead of February's trade deadline. Reed has a non-guaranteed contract this season and next season as well. Keep an eye on Reed as a potential salary filler in trade talks or to command a potential future second-round draft pick from a team seeking frontcourt depth on the trade market. Houston Rockets. Steven Adams, Jeff Green, Jock Landale, Jason Tate. NBA executives around the league who spoke with Hoops Hype pinpoint the Houston Rockets as one of the teams best positioned to make a blockbuster trade, given their young assets and future draft picks. Despite recent reports that the Rockets aren't interested in trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo and Kevin Durant, there's skepticism from NBA executives around the league that Houston won't look to acquire a big-name star at some point in the next couple of transaction cycles. According to those executives, the question is not whether Houston will make a big splash but when. Rockets center Alperen Sengun has admirers around the league but is unlikely to be moved after signing a 5-year, $185 million extension. Jalen Green was floated in trade rumors last season for former Brooklyn Nets swingman Mikal Bridges and has since signed a 3-year $105.3 million extension. Despite the extension, NBA executives across the league believe Green won't be off limits in future trade discussions. Amen Thompson has been a lockdown defender since entering the league and has improved his three-point shooting gradually this season with Houston. Rookie guard Reed Sheppard is also an intriguing piece as a high-level shooter and playmaker to teams around the league as he learns behind veteran Fred VanVleet as his backup. Houston also has several decisions looming, such as what to do with VanVleet's $44.89 million team option for next season and how they'll approach extension talks next summer with forwards Jabari Smith Jr. and Tari Eason. Will the Rockets extend Smith Jr., who's failed to take a leap in his development as a starter, or sell on him before deciding whether to pay him big bucks next summer? Eason has consistently been a solid role player for the Rockets that has drawn interest from teams around the league. Reserve Steven Adams $12.6 million, Jeff Green $8 million, and Jason Tate $7.57 million are all on expiring contracts. Jock Landale $8 million also has a non-guaranteed salary for next season. Each player can be a salary filler in trade talks. Given Houston's hot start to the season, the Rockets have even more flexibility as they decide who will remain a part of their young core looking ahead. Memphis Grizzlies. Marcus Smart and Luke Kennard. Following an injury-marred 2023-24 season, the Memphis Grizzlies entered this season with renewed expectations of being a playoff contender. Many around the league wondered if Coach Taylor Jenkins would be on the hot seat this season after his assistant coaching staff endured a massive overhaul during the offseason. However, Jenkins recently became the franchise's all-time leader in coaching wins, surpassing Lionel Hollins, and will look to add more wins to his record and guide the Grizzlies to the conference finals for the first time since 2013. Thus far, the Grizzlies have been one of the top teams in the West through a quarter of the season. Despite injuries to Ja Morant and Desmond Bane early this season, Memphis has been able to withstand them and remain competitive, while Jaren Jackson Jr. has led the team in scoring. Outside of their top 3 players, Memphis has seen development from their young role players. Santi Aldama continues to improve in his 4th season and leads the team in rebounding. Scottie Pippen Jr. has thrived as Morant's backup and is a spot starting point guard to earn a 4-year extension, as first reported by Hoops Hype. Rookie second-round pick Jalen Wells is making an early case for an all-rookie team spot and has earned a starting spot thanks primarily to his knockdown shooting. Fellow rookie Zach Edey has anchored the starting center spot. Jay Huff has enjoyed a breakout season at 26 and has made a case for a slam dunk contest spot at All-Star Weekend with some acrobatic highlight dunks. Jake LaRavia, who will become an unrestricted free agent this summer after Memphis declined his team option, has also been an all-around contributor shooting the ball efficiently while ranking third on the team in assists. With Memphis about $1.8 million below the luxury tax threshold, the Grizzlies have future draft capital and a couple of veterans who will likely draw trade interest. While Marcus Smart has struggled with injuries and inconsistent play since joining the Grizzlies, some executives around the league believe he could return to his Celtics form with a change of scenery. The former Defensive Player of the Year is owed $20.21 million this season, a movable figure, at 30 years old. Sharpshooter Luke Kennard remains one of the league's top three-point snipers, and his $9.25 million expiring contract is also easy to incorporate into a trade. Memphis has preached continuity, but if there's an upgrade available, don't count the Grizzlies out. Los Angeles Lakers. D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura and Gabe Vincent. New season, same trade candidates for the Los Angeles Lakers. NBA executives who spoke with Hoops Hype believe two future Lakers first-round draft picks in 2029 and 2031 are the team's most coveted trade assets, given the Stempian rule. The Lakers can trade two unprotected first-round picks and 3 swaps overall. In addition to those draft picks, D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, and Gabe Vincent will be discussed on the trade market. Coming off his 2 best shooting seasons from beyond the arc, Russell struggled out of the gate under new coach J.J. Redick and was moved to the bench. After being dangled in trade talks last season, most notably for DeJounte Murray, Russell, the third highest paid Laker on an $18.69 million expiring contract, will hear his name in the rumor mill again. Hachimura has been a consistent starter for the Lakers since February last season, with the best three-point percentage of his career. He's owed $35.26 million through the 2025-26 season, making him an attractive piece to any trade package. Vincent has been a disappointment for the Lakers since signing a 3-year, $33 million deal due to injuries and inefficient shooting. Los Angeles will look to include him as a salary filler with draft pick compensation in trade talks. Keep an eye on Los Angeles potentially dangling Vincent and future second-round picks to try and land Wizards center Jonas Valanciunas, a coveted Lakers target. Los Angeles Clippers. P.J. Tucker and Bones Hyland. Heading into the season, NBA executives across the league wondered if a bad start would make the Clippers consider a potential rebuild. However, despite losing Paul George in free agency and Kawhi Leonard's absence, the Los Angeles Clippers have remained competitive thanks to career seasons from Norman Powell, a Most Improved Player of the Year candidate, and center Ivica Zubac, with James Harden as the offensive maestro. Newcomer Derrick Jones Jr. has filled a consistent starting role, while reserve additions Chris Dunn and Kevin Porter Jr. have supplanted the rotation with quality minutes. As a result, 2 of the most prominent trade candidates on the Clippers include P.J. Tucker's $11.54 million expiring contract and guard Bones Hyland. Tucker, a 13-year NBA veteran, could be included as salary filler for a trade, but some teams are monitoring whether he'll eventually hit the buyout market in a few months. After the team landed Dunn as the primary backup point guard this offseason, the writing was on the wall for Hyland, who recently turned 24. Hyland will be eligible for restricted free agency this summer. Given Hyland's age and contract situation, there's a chance a team will consider trading a second-round pick to take a chance on him. Indiana Pacers. Obi Toppin and Jarris Walker. Injuries to Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nebbard, Ben Shepherd, season-ending injuries to James Wiseman and Isaiah Jackson, and Tyrese Halliburton's uncharacteristic shooting struggles have all played a role in Indiana's slow start to the season. The Pacers have several future first-round draft picks and tradable young assets to make a splash on the trade market if they choose. Guards T.J. McConnell and Benedict Mathurin have drawn significant interest from teams around the league during their time with Indiana, but the Pacers have resisted overtures for both players. McConnell is viewed as a productive backup and veteran leader, while Mathurin is touted as a rising young talent with all-star potential. With McConnell signing his extension on September 3, he's unable to be traded until the offseason. Though Miles Turner is in the final year of his contract at $19.93 million, and teams across the league have always coveted him from afar, the belief is Indiana wants to re-sign him. With forwards Obi Toppin and Jarris Walker, Indiana's 8th overall pick of the 2023 draft, stuck behind Pascal Siakam on the depth chart, there's a belief that Indiana could eventually part with one of the two. Toppin is in the midst of a 4-year, $60 million contract, and Walker still has untapped potential in the eyes of executives around the league due to a lack of consistent playing time. Looking ahead, rookie two-way forward Enrique Freeman is a name to watch as a standard NBA contract conversion candidate after the trade deadline, league sources told Hoops Hype. Miami Heat, Jimmy Butler and Terry Rozier. After losing in the NBA Finals twice in the last 5 years, the Miami Heat has begun the season hovering around the .500 mark, leaving many around the league questioning whether they have enough to get back to that level or are closer to the team that's also been knocked out in the first round twice in the last 5 years. Towards the start of the season, the Brooklyn Nets and Golden State Warriors were among the teams linked to Jimmy Butler, per reports. While Butler has drawn interest from the Nets in past years, he's not viewed as a fit for Brooklyn's rebuilding timeline at 35, league sources told Hoops Hype. Across town, the New York Knicks expressed interest in Butler this past summer, sources said. However, talks didn't go far beyond exploratory interest before the Knicks acquired Mikal Bridges from the Nets, who were much more willing to make a trade than the Heat at the time. The Warriors, meanwhile, have gotten off to a hot start to begin the season and are one of the top teams in the West. Within league circles, there's been quiet discourse about whether the Houston Rockets or Dallas Mavericks will eventually land Butler, a Texas native, should he and Miami decide to part ways. For now, however, the Rockets are among the top teams with a young core, and the Mavericks remain a contender in the tightly competitive Western Conference. It's also worth noting executives who've checked in on Butler got the impression that Miami wants to figure out their star's future after the season. Aside from Butler, the top Heat trade candidates are Miami's future first-round draft picks and Terry Rozier, according to NBA executives who've spoken with Hoops Hype. The 30-year-old guard was recently moved to the bench as his scoring production is the lowest in 8 years. Rozier is owed $24.92 million this season and is guaranteed $24.92 million next season, with another $1.72 million non-guaranteed. Rozier's remaining salary becomes fully guaranteed if his team participates in the conference semifinals and he plays in at least 70 regular season games. Milwaukee Bucks. Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton and Marjon Beauchamp. The Milwaukee Bucks began the season with a 2-8 record and many executives around the league circling like vultures ready to pounce, hoping that a frustrated Giannis Antetokounmpo at the time would want out if the struggles continued and if Damian Lillard would have joined him, and whether Doc Rivers would remain as coach. Since then, tensions have calmed as Milwaukee has been able to right the ship for now, and the Bucks hope the expected return of Chris Middleton will continue to push them in a positive direction. Yet, executive John Horst has aggressively worked the phones on the trade market and will continue to do so through February. After winning the NBA Finals in 2021, Milwaukee has taken steps backward in the past 3 seasons, including consecutive first-round playoff exits. With Antetokounmpo turning 30 in December and an aging core around him with Lillard 34, Middleton 33, Lopez 36, and Portis turning 30 in February, many around the league believe Milwaukee's championship window is nearing a close if it hasn't already. Veterans Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton have been mentioned as the top trade candidates by executives across the league for a couple of years, including at the start of this season, but both have survived to this point. The new plot twist executives around the league are monitoring closely as if Horst would consider moving Milwaukee's 2031 first-round pick to move the needle on the trade market with the salaries of Portis, Connaughton, and even the possibility of Middleton, who's owed $31.67 million this season and has a $34 million player option next season. Portis $12.58 million and Connaughton $9.42 are on the books for a combined $22 million this season and have player options for next season, with Portis at $13.45 million and Connaughton at $9.42 million. Portis has seen a statistical dip in his three-point shooting this season, but his overall scoring and rebounding are on par with last season's production. Connaughton is having the worst shooting season of his career since his rookie campaign and was removed from the rotation for a handful of games. In addition, 24-year-old wing Marjon Beauchamp had his rookie-scale team option declined for next season and has seen his role significantly reduced this season, making him a prime candidate to be traded, league sources told Hoops Hype. Minnesota Timberwolves. Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo. With the Minnesota Timberwolves underperforming to start the season, franchise cornerstone Anthony Edwards recently called the team out for acting like frontrunners, being soft as hell as a team, internally, and not doing what their coaches say. However many of us it is, all 15, we go into our own shell, and we're just growing away from each other. It's obvious, Edwards said on November 27. We can see it, I can see it, the team can see it, the coaches can see it. After acquiring Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo as part of the three-team blockbuster trade with the Knicks and Hornets that sent Karl Anthony Towns to New York, questions surrounding how Randle would fit alongside Rudy Gobert and Naz Reid in the frontcourt and alongside Edwards as a co-star arose. As Edwards pointed out, the chemistry for the team overall has not yet developed after a seismic trade at the start of training camp. Coming off shoulder surgery, Randle has been an efficient shooter from the field, but his rebounding rate is the lowest of his career. Coach Chris Finch worked with Randle during their time on the New Orleans Pelicans and knows his game well, which gives some optimism for better cohesion as the season progresses. However, if Randle, who has a $30.94 million player option for the 2025-26 season, doesn't mesh well with his new Timberwolves teammates soon, he could be a candidate to be flipped in a trade again ahead of the deadline. It's also worth noting that Reid, who has a $15 million player option for next season, has supporters in Minnesota's front office who believe he could thrive with more minutes after winning the 6th Man of the Year award last season. For context, Reid has averaged 19.8 points and 8.5 rebounds when he's played 30 to 39 minutes in 24 career games. Fellow newcomer DiVincenzo has struggled mightily shooting the ball, coming off the best season of his career with the Knicks. Yet, despite his slow start to the season, executives around the league still believe in his three-point shooting, 40% the past 2 seasons, and perimeter defense, which would allow the Timberwolves the flexibility to trade him if they desire a change. New Orleans Pelicans. Brandon Ingram and C.J. McCollum. The New Orleans Pelicans have been decimated by injuries across their entire roster more than any NBA team, with Zion Williamson, C.J. McCollum, DeJounte Murray, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Jordan Hawkins, and Jose Alvarado all missing time during the start of the season. The injuries have caused New Orleans to sink to the bottom of the Western Conference standings and move further above the luxury tax with a current projection of nearly $3.6 million over the threshold. According to league sources, the Pelicans want to avoid paying the luxury tax, ideally, which would mean they'll have to make a cost-cutting trade by the deadline. Another major decision for ownership and management is figuring out the future of forward Brandon Ingram, who leads the team in scoring and has averaged 23 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 5.2 assists during his 5+ years with the Pelicans. Ingram wants to land as close to a max contract in free agency as possible, while the Pelicans would prefer to pay him slightly above his current $36 million salary, league sources told Hoops Hype. With the organization pledging to build around Williamson this past offseason, questions surrounding his fit alongside Ingram remain. In addition, McCollum remains a 20-point scorer when healthy and is viewed as a leader in the locker room by the organization, but is he a long-term fit with the newly acquired Murray in the backcourt long-term? At 33, some executives around the league believe the Pelicans could be willing to listen to offers for McCollum. One of the NBA executives told Hoops Hype, New Orleans should move McCollum, and they'll likely move Ingram for another proven player. Yet, as always, the success of the Pelicans hinges on the health of Williamson, who another NBA executive told Hoops Hype he'd only consider trading one first-round pick to acquire due to his consistent durability concerns. Philadelphia 76ers. K.J. Martin. The Philadelphia 76ers entered the season with championship aspirations but have been the biggest disappointment through the start of the season as their star trio of Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George have all dealt with injuries. One of the few bright spots has been rookie Jared McCain, who's arguably the top rookie of the year candidate and looks like a keeper. So, who could be traded before the deadline to help the 76ers get back on track? The top trade candidate for Philadelphia is KJ Martin, who re-signed to a 2-year, $16 million contract, which is non-guaranteed for next season. Martin's nearly $8 million salary for this season was designed with potential trade candidates in mind elsewhere around the league, sources told Hoops Hype. Kelly Oubre Jr. and Caleb Martin also have similar salaries but were both viewed as key rotational pieces heading into the season, and nothing has changed that stance since the start of the season. Philadelphia could package KJ Martin with 1 or 2 first-round picks from 2029 to 2031 for a win-now upgrade this season, but if the team's trio can't stay healthy, it won't likely move the needle much. If Philadelphia continues to struggle and remains at the bottom of the standings because of injuries, it's worth noting the 76ers would keep their first-round pick this season if it falls within the first 6 selections. Otherwise, it goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Orlando Magic. Cole Anthony. The Orlando Magic have emphasized continuity and development of its young core, featuring Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, and Wendell Carter Jr., which has helped them become one of the rising teams in the East. Another notable core member, 20-year-old Anthony Black, has earned a larger role this season. Black's growth, coupled with the free agent addition of starting shooting guard Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, has resulted in a significantly reduced role for Cole Anthony, which makes him a viable trade candidate in the eyes of NBA executives around the league. Gary Harris also has a movable contract worth $7.5 million with a team option for next season, and his role has also declined. However, Harris is considered a valued mentor and remains a capable three-point shooter when called upon. San Antonio Spurs. Chris Paul. The San Antonio Spurs are ahead of their rebuilding schedule thanks largely to the veteran leadership of rejuvenated 39-year-old point guard Chris Paul. Similarly to when Paul was on the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team many projected for the lottery, the future Hall of Famer has helped his team defy expectations thus far. With Paul on a 1-year, $10.46 million deal, it wouldn't be surprising for championship contending teams to have interest in him as a rental to fortify their backcourts. With that said, San Antonio has valued Paul's leadership and mentorship of franchise star Victor Wembanyama, with whom he's formed an effective pick-and-roll tandem. Adding veteran leaders such as Paul and former champion Harrison Barnes was an emphasis for San Antonio to foster the growth of Wembanyama, Devin Vassell, Stephon Castle, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sochan, etc., and teach them how to win. Sacramento Kings. Kevin Huerter and Trey Lyles. With heightened expectations following the addition of 35-year-old DeMar DeRozan this offseason, the Sacramento Kings have underwhelmed thus far. Thus, executives around the league are monitoring if the team will be more willing to part with either future first-round draft picks, 24-year-old forward Keegan Murray, and rookie guard Devin Carter, who's yet to play this season. With DeRozan still playing at a high level, Domantas Sabonis thriving in his prime at 28, De'Aaron Fox having the best offensive season of his career at 26 ahead of becoming extension eligible for a massive pay raise, newly re-signed Malik Monk entering his prime at 26, and owner Vivek Ranadive hoping to make a run in the playoffs this season, there's a heightened sense of urgency in Sacramento. The Kings dangled Kevin Huerter and Trey Lyles on the trade market last season and are expected to do so again this season, league sources said, with their salaries combining for roughly $25 million. Oklahoma City Thunder. Kenrich Williams. The Oklahoma City Thunder has arrived as a perennial contender in the West for years with a loaded young core led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren. According to numerous executives around the league, Oklahoma City has the best assets, including young talent, tradable contracts, and future first-round draft picks, should executive Sam Presti want to make a blockbuster move. For now, however, the next item on Presti's agenda is expected to be contract extension discussions in December with guard Alex Caruso, who was acquired from the Bulls in exchange for Josh Giddey this offseason. Caruso is expected to receive a sizable pay raise from his current $9.89 million salary. With the team getting more expensive next season, will another Thunder player follow Giddey out of Oklahoma City before the trade deadline? While there's no sense of urgency for Presti to make a trade to duck the luxury tax or make a win-now rotational upgrade, the Thunder can gauge the market on 30-year-old forward Kenrich Williams, who's tied with Caruso as the oldest Thunder player. Williams has seen a reduced role and is owed $7.16 million next season. Given Oklahoma City's depth, 21-year-old forward Ousmane Dieng could also make sense for teams around the league looking to take a flyer on a former lottery pick who could play more elsewhere. Should the Thunder keep a roster spot open as expected, rookie two-way guard Ajay Mitchell is considered a strong conversion candidate, league sources told Hoops Hype. Mitchell, the 38th overall pick in the draft, has been an efficient shooter as a combo guard and a solid defender. Portland Trail Blazers. Robert Williams, DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant and Anthony Simons. The Portland Trail Blazers have invested heavily in the drafting and development of its young core of Donovan Clingan, 20, Scoot Henderson, 20, and Shaedon Sharpe, 21. Denny Avdija, 23, was also acquired for a high price tag of Malcolm Brogdon, 2 first-round picks, and 2 second-round picks. Clingan has shown advanced flashes of being an elite rim protector with good shooting touch for his 7'2" frame in his rookie season. Thus, there's a belief around the league that Portland will look to finally sell on Robert Williams while he's healthy and could also gauge DeAndre Ayton's trade value. Williams and Ayton are both signed through the 2025-26 season, with Ayton due $69.55 million and Williams owed $25.72 million. Elsewhere in the frontcourt, forward Jeremy Grant has drawn consistent trade interest since signing a 5-year, $160 million contract, but there's been a difference in opinion on his value. Portland has been unwilling to trade Grant without 2 first-round picks in return, while interested teams have only been willing to consider parting with 1 first-round pick. Some teams also view Grant's contract as a neutral asset. In the backcourt, Sharpe is leading the Blazers in scoring and is viewed by Blazers personnel as a potential all-star down the line if he hits his ceiling. Henderson was drafted 3rd overall in 2023 to become the franchise's long-term starting point guard as Damian Lillard's replacement. Thus, with Anthony Simons coming off an injury-shortened 2023-24 season and struggling to find his rhythm to start this season, some executives around the league question if Portland will be more willing to part with the 25-year-old guard than in years past. New York Knicks. Mitchell Robinson and Precious Achiuwa. Tim Nwachukwu, Getty Images. The New York Knicks are narrowly projected to avoid the second apron by slightly less than $600,000 thanks to shrewd salary cap management. Following the blockbuster acquisition of Karl Anthony Towns, who's played like an All-NBA player this season along with Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby playing like one of the best two-way wings in the game, and Josh Hart having the best offensive season of his career, the Knicks still have flexibility to make another trade if necessary. Knicks center Mitchell Robinson is owed $14.32 million this season and $12.95 next season, while Precious Achiuwa is on an expiring $6 million deal. Combining both salaries would give the Knicks a chance to theoretically acquire another player in the $20 million range if there's a fit. With that said, however, the Knicks believe Robinson can help anchor their interior defense when he returns and can play alongside Towns, who'd slide over to power forward. Knicks coach Tom Thibodeau is a strong advocate for Robinson and believes he can help the team win in the playoffs. It's also worth noting that Achiuwa averaged 12.5 points on 52.6% shooting, 9.5 rebounds, 1.8 blocks, and 1.1 steals in 18 starts last season. Looking ahead, sharpshooter Landry Shamet is expected to be re-signed by the Knicks when he's healthy, with the hope that stretch forward Matt Ryan will then clear waivers and re-sign on a 2-way contract, league sources told Hoops Hype. Phoenix Suns. Josh Okogie. The Phoenix Suns look like a championship contender in the Western Conference when Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal are healthy under new coach Mike Budenholzer. Yet, health has always been the asterisk for this trio. During the offseason, Phoenix fortified its bench by re-signing Royce O'Neal and making shrewd moves to add starting point guard Tyus Jones on a veteran minimum contract and rookie contributors Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro through the draft. Phoenix also re-signed Josh Okogie for rotational depth but also to dangle his contract as a tradable asset, league sources told Hoops Hype. The Suns are paying Okogie $8.25 million this year, and his $7.75 million salary for the 2025-26 season is non-guaranteed. With their payroll well above the second apron, the Suns have limited roster flexibility and will likely have to rely on their stars to stay healthy and carry the load. Toronto Raptors. Bruce Brown. Toronto Raptors. Bruce Brown. Stephen Liu Main Images. The Toronto Raptors have dealt with several injuries early in the season that have played a role in their placement toward the bottom of the Eastern Conference, including the prolonged absences of Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, and Kelly Olynyk. Despite the slow start, R.J. Barrett has grown as a playmaker, Grady Dick has taken a scoring leap in his second season, Jakob Poeltl is playing the best basketball of his career, averaging 16 points and 12 rebounds, and Chris Boucher has bounced back this season with the Raptors. The Raptors could choose to sell high on Poeltl to teams looking for a center and trend further towards a complete rebuild, or look to move Boucher, a 31-year-old, who's in the final year of his contract, for teams searching for frontcourt depth, but either scenario remains to be seen. One prevalent belief throughout the league is that Toronto will look to trade Bruce Brown, who's on an expiring $23 million deal. Last year, Toronto declined offers of multiple second-round picks for Brown, league sources told HoopsHype. This season, Brown has yet to play after having an arthroscopic surgical procedure on his right knee. Utah Jazz. Walker Kessler, Jordan Clarkson, John Collins and Colin Sexton. The Utah Jazz have been one of the league's worst teams to start the season and are putting themselves in contention for the Cooper Flag sweepstakes at this rate, which leads people around the league to question if this could finally be the season Utah sells off some veteran pieces. Due to collective bargaining agreement rules, star forward Lauri Markkanen can't be traded until the offseason, at the earliest, after signing his contract extension. With that in mind, all eyes are on Walker Kessler, Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, and Colin Sexton. Teams gauging Kessler's availability in Utah have come away with the sense that it'll take at least 2 first-round picks to pry him from the Jazz, a high asking price in their eyes. With Keontae George starting full-time this season, executives are monitoring Sexton and Clarkson's availability for potential backcourt depth. Collins has been on a tear since returning to the starting lineup, averaging 20 points on 56% shooting from the field and 40% beyond the arc, 10 rebounds, and 1.5 steals in 10 games. All 4 players have contracts that run through the 2025-26 season if Collins exercises his $26.58 million player option for next season. Washington Wizards. Kyle Kuzma, Jonas Valanciunas and Malcolm Brogdon. Before the season, Washington Wizards general manager Will Dawkins said the team is still in a deconstruction phase. With several veteran players who could appeal to contending teams, the Wizards will be a team to monitor ahead of the trade deadline. In Washington, forward Kyle Kuzma is viewed as one of the team leaders who keeps the Wizards competitive while helping to build the development of the other young players around him as a forward who can score and defend. Teams around the league believe the 29-year-old forward is worth monitoring as a trade candidate due to his skill set and declining salary over the next 2 years while in his prime years. Executives around the league also believe Kuzma doesn't fit the long-term timeline of Washington's young core. The Dallas Mavericks nearly traded for Kuzma last season before pivoting to acquisitions of P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford. The Indiana Pacers were interested in Kuzma before swinging a blockbuster trade to acquire Pascal Siakam. The Sacramento Kings have also been linked to Kuzma for the past 2 seasons. Other teams who've kept tabs on Kuzma include the Bucks, Warriors, Lakers, Heat, and Cavaliers, HoopsHype has learned. Speaking of the frontcourt, playoff-caliber teams needing help at center have cited Jonas Valanciunas as a potential trade target. Valanciunas was acquired in a sign-and-trade from the New Orleans Pelicans to be a veteran mentor to number 2 overall pick Alex Sir and take a load off the young rookie guarding bigger frontcourt players. Valanciunas has been efficient as a reserve center for Washington this season. Behind the scenes, Valanciunas has helped Sir's development by going up against him in practice and teaching him things on both sides of the ball. The Los Angeles Lakers are among the teams with the most diligent interest in trying to acquire Valanciunas, league sources told HoopsHype. Veteran guard Malcolm Brogdon is another Wizard that playoff-caliber teams are monitoring, especially with his $22.5 million expiring contract coming off the books this summer. Looking ahead, second-round picks and accompanying bad contracts may not move the needle for the Wizards. Washington has many second-round picks stockpiled already. Keep in mind, Washington had offers of multiple second-round picks for Tyus Jones last season, which were rejected, league sources told HoopsHype. Lastly, watch for Johnny Davis, $5.29 million, and Patrick Baldwin Jr. $2.45 million as potential salary fillers in trade talks. Before NBA rosters were finalized before the season, Davis and Baldwin Jr. were dangled on the trade market, league sources told Hoops Hype.